Jeffrey Dahmer, the Milwaukee cannibal. Last part. As we talked about earlier, when Jeffrey Dahmer was arrested for his horrendous crimes, it shook the entire society. It's crucial to acknowledge the seriousness of his actions and the pain they caused to his victims and their families. Now let's delve into what happened after he was arrested and faced the legal consequences. The media frenzy surrounding Jeffrey Dahmer's heinous crimes escalated rapidly. Local television stations were first to arrive at the crime scene, followed by national and international media. The shocking footage of Dahmer's apartment building was broadcasted, revealing a large blue barrel used for dissolving body parts and a refrigerator containing skulls and other remains. The scene was unlike anything previously witnessed and left viewers in disbelief. A journalist for the Milwaukee Journal reported on the story as soon as it broke out, releasing it earlier in the morning despite our paper's usual afternoon schedule. The horrific nature of the crime made it impossible to ignore, and its impact will undoubtedly be felt for years to come. Dahmer confessed to the investigations of committing 16 murders, admitting that he could not remember most of his victims' names. He called detectives from jail to offer more details, claiming to help victims' families with closure. While this may seem commendable, Dahmer's unimaginable and horrific crimes will leave a lasting impact on those affected. Jeffrey Dahmer was different from most other serial killers in that he seemed to feel some degree of regret and understood the depth of his wrongdoing. He admitted to murdering 16 people in Wisconsin, but was charged with only 4 counts of murder, initially back in July 1991. Later in August of the same year, the number of charges increased to 11 counts. In Ohio, authorities found the remains of Stephen Hicks in the woods near Dahmer's family home, and a preliminary hearing was set for January 1992. Dahmer's lawyers planned to argue that he was insane at the time of the killings, but did not excuse the fact that he had taken the lives of numerous innocent people. His actions were extremely gruesome and will be remembered for a long time. Despite his horrific crimes, if Jeffrey Dahmer had been deemed insane, he would have been sentenced to a mental health facility rather than a prison. It's important to understand that this insanity rule is not based on how crazy an individual's actions may seem. However, the city of Milwaukee wanted justice for the victims and for Dahmer to be locked away for his crimes. The trial of Dahmer became one of the most significant in the history of Wisconsin and the United States. The case shocked the community, as people couldn't believe that such atrocities could happen in their peaceful Midwestern city. Nevertheless, Dahmer's actions were heinous, and he needed to be held accountable for his crimes. The Dahmer trial captivated the nation, but the crucial question remained: was he sane enough to be held accountable for his crimes? The highly publicized trial of Jeffrey Dahmer started on January 30th, 1992. People were drawn to the spectacle due to the novelty of court TV, and the media station was unprecedented in Milwaukee. Despite the shock of Dahmer's appearance, appearing like any other ordinary person, the Milwaukee DA, Mike McCann, had to prove that Dahmer was sane and accountable for his heinous crimes. While his guilt was not in question, the prosecution and defense aimed to present the facts of the case, highlighting the extent of Dahmer's premeditation and behavior. It was crucial for the jury to understand the severity and skill involved in his actions, and to dispel the notion that he was incapable of controlling himself. The testimony during the trial of Jeffrey Dahmer was extremely graphic, and even seasoned attorneys were shocked by the atrocities described in the criminal complaint and confession. Despite the horrific nature of the crimes, DA Mike McCann and his team wanted to prove that Dahmer was sane and responsible for his actions. To do so, they called upon the expertise of psychiatry expert Dr. Philip Resnick, who explained that while the crimes were bizarre and shocking, they did not necessarily qualify as insanity under the strict definition. In fact, Dahmer had been able to conceal his actions and behave in a way that made it seem as though he was perfectly sane, even fooling those who worked with him. It was a difficult and disturbing case for everyone involved, and it left a lasting impact on the community of Milwaukee. Despite the gruesome nature of Jeffrey Dahmer's crimes, expert psychiatrists have concluded that his actions do not qualify for an insanity plea. As a consultant on the case, it was pointed out that even those with necrophilic tendencies usually find ways to fulfill their desires without resorting to homicide. The trial was focused on determining Dahmer's mental state, and specialist psychiatrists debated the issue over a period of 2 weeks. Meanwhile, Dahmer sat quietly in the courtroom, watching it all unfold. During the trial, Jeffrey Dahmer seemed to be quiet, composed, and stable. He didn't exhibit any negative behavior or signs of being mentally unstable. In his confession, he admitted that he committed the heinous crimes, but not out of hatred, but because he was aware of his sickness and evilness. He now acknowledges that he was so sick and wants people to understand and help him recover. However, he should never forget the atrocities he committed and the innocent lives he took. It's the responsibility of the legal system to determine the punishment he deserves for his actions. On February 15th, the jury finally decided on Dahmer's sanity. It's understandable that they would be hesitant to accept an insanity plea from someone who'd never been hospitalized for mental illness. Moreover, since his actions were driven by sexual urges rather than a traditional psychosis that causes detachment from reality, and he went to great lengths to conceal his crimes, proving insanity would be an uphill battle. It's a difficult case to win. On February 17, 1992, Judge Lawrence Graham sentenced Jeffrey Dahmer to life imprisonment for each of the 15 accounts against him. The ruling was met with a great shout from the gallery, especially from the victims' families, who cried in relief. I felt happy that this danger was removed from our community, and that the jury had seen through Dahmer's attempt to claim insanity. Although Wisconsin doesn't have the death penalty, Dahmer would still have to serve a minimum of 936 years. He was immediately sent to the Columbia Correctional Institute in Portage. This verdict serves as a reminder that justice will be served for even the most heinous crimes. On May 1st, 1992, Dahmer received another life sentence for the murder of Stephen Hicks in 1978. Despite being locked away for life, Dahmer admitted that his urges to kill remained. However, he found solace in religion and even got baptized in 1994, with the help of local minister Roy Ratcliffe. Ratcliffe was initially uneasy about being alone in a room with a notorious serial killer, but he eventually came to see Dahmer as a troubled person in need of spiritual guidance. Despite the initial discomfort of meeting with a man who had committed such heinous crimes, Minister Roy Ratcliffe remained focused on his purpose and determined to help during this meeting. During their meeting, he found Jeffrey Dahmer to be a normal and courteous individual. However, when shaking Dahmer's hands, Ratcliffe couldn't help but think about the terrible things he'd done. 2 years after his sentencing on May 10th, 1994, Dahmer was baptized in a prison bathtub by Ratcliffe. The same day, John Wayne Gacy was executed. After the baptism, Ratcliffe welcomed Dahmer to the family of God, to which Dahmer replied with gratitude. On November 28, 1994, Christopher Scarver fatally killed Jeffrey Dahmer and Jesse Anderson. Some believe Dahmer deserved it, while others mourned the loss of life and chance of rehabilitation. Dahmer's mother felt both closure and grief. Despite his heinous crimes, we must recognize the potential for personal growth and change in all individuals. Despite of the demolition of the apartment where Jeffrey Dahmer committed his heinous crimes, his legacy as one of the most notorious serial killers in the world continues. While some find a strange symmetry in the fact that he died by the same method he used to kill his first victim, there's no denying the sheer horror of his actions. The crimes Jeffrey Dahmer committed were extremely brutal and disturbing, including murder, cannibalism, and keeping body parts as keepsakes. It's hard to determine his mental state, but it's undeniable that he committed some of the most evilest acts imaginable. His story is a terrifying reminder of the darkest side of human behavior. The question remains, how can we understand someone capable of such atrocities? It is a mystery that may never be fully explained, but we cannot forget the lives that were lost and the families left behind to mourn.